I'm getting word that we have results in the most hotly contested local race of the night, the Hennepin County Attorney's race, where, Josh, you give us the results.
So, with Hennepin County Attorney, a strong finish for Mary Moriarty, winning 57.6% of the vote.
We're rolling.
Calling out tap people. This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
Also, Diana, to warn you, the theme of this was the drug-fueled election results spooktacular. I took one gummy because I know that it takes 3 to affect someone of my body size. I wasn't brave enough to go all the way. Taylor, I'm told you took 3.
3, and I'm having 2 right now.
Oh my God,
Wow.
Taylor. Can you die of a Mike Norton gummy overdose? Okay.
No, not yet. I'm trying.
It's weird that the vice chair of the Minneapolis DFL is now a drug kingpin, right?
I mean, it's always the white guys with capital.
Yeah. Everyone I talk, only I don't know how great of an entrepreneur he is, because everyone you meet is like, Mike Norton gave me free drugs. What is the business model of this?
I bought
Does
some.
anyone log? Oh, you did?
I did, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You paid money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I ordered it.
Was it after?
I ordered it the first day the website went up, and then later I got free months.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well,
I guess I'm the only one paying.
Which is ironic, because Taylor is sort of a weed influencer now.
are you?
I guess so.
Didn't Mike use one of your quotes in an ad,
Yeah.
Taylor?
Because I hate white chocolate, but their white chocolate's really good, so.
They are tasty. I should introduce the show before we get too far into this. This is the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards, and I'm here with co-anchor. You're a co-anchor now, Jason, for the
all right.
2022 drug-fueled election results spooktacular, which I think I've already explained. Some of us have had some of Mike Norton's free drugs, except Josh, who we failed to tell that was the theme of the episode. And do you want to just get into it? The whole point is election results, and here we are, the day after the election. Many people, myself included, entered Election Day bracing for what they call a red wave, which means Republicans sweep across the country, taking power, instituting their brand of non-democracy, some would call fascism, authoritarianism or something. But we didn't get that, especially not in Minnesota, I don't think.
No, not at all. I think we should mention that the last time that we did an election recap show last fall was a lot of gloom and doom, and you talked about how you weren't having fun with this anymore, things like that, and I think that we're going to have a whole new level of discourse tonight since we decided to do something proactively about that.
Yeah, I am in a slightly better mood. I feel like it felt to me like emotionally I was on one trajectory for a very long time, losing my faith in humanity. Like last night convinced me maybe there are enough good people in the world that we can move in another direction. But let's get to the results, because we don't yet know the final results here on the Wedge Live podcast. We've all been very studiously avoiding any news or any Secretary of State's results pages. We haven't looked at it, and I don't think they're fully updated yet. We have the official results, is what I'm saying, right, Jason?
That's right. We've been tapping into Steve Simon's personal emails, making sure that we know what's going on. at every level of this election, and Taylor was goodly enough to get us all those results. We sent them out to our data expert, Josh, who sometimes resembles a character out of the Matrix, and has been crunching those numbers all day for us.
The system has been rigged so that only we know what really happened last night. And as I say that, Jason, I'm getting word from our election desk, headed up by Josh Martin. We have results in the governor's race for Minnesota with Josh Martin at the election desk. Josh, what are the results?
That's right, John. We have results for Governor Tim Walz and Peggy Flanagan for incumbent governor and lieutenant governor for the DFL. Win re-election with 52.3% of the vote compared to 44.6% of the vote for Scott Jensen and Matt Burke.
Wow.
Just a stunning turn of events from the numbers we were seeing last week, John.
Yeah, my takeaway is that nominating like a guy who became famous as like a COVID conspiracy doctor was not the way to go. Just an all-around bad candidate. And I think joining us from a hotel ballroom, I think.
Correct.
Taylor, what's the mood? What's the mood over at the Scott Jensen?
Very, very somber. Very somber. There's a little bit of denial, though. I mean, these are the COVID deniers, the election deniers. So there is still, they're trying to like hold out hope, but overall it's pretty somber and they know they lost.
Hi, okay, thank you, Taylor. Sounds like it's pretty sad over there. I'm getting word that we have results for Minnesota's Secretary of State. Josh, can you give us results from the Secretary of State's race?
That's right, John. Steve Simon, Secretary of State, it won re-election with 54.6% of the vote compared to Kim Crockett's 45.4% of the vote. So Steve Simon will continue to be the state's chief elections official.
Okay. Well, that's a relief. I like having free and fair elections.
Yeah, it feels like, somebody who is running for a position like Secretary of State should have their things a little bit more together than what we were seeing from the Crockett campaign. So I don't know that you could really classify this as an upset in any way, John, but this does put Steve Simon back into that role for a third term. What do you think about that?
I feel good about it. As I said, I like having free and fair elections. The GOP probably made a mistake nominating an election denier for that spot. Poor candidate, probably. Is this comedy bit working at all?
I think you're going to have to do some cuts, but,
Okay.
We'll have a whole B-reel to use later.
Okay. I feel like we did better the last time with the election results and the CNN breaking news music. Maybe it's not fresh anymore. Okay, I'm getting word in the Minnesota Attorney General's race. This one has been too close to call for a very long time, but we're getting final results now from the election desk and Josh Martin. Josh, can you tell us the results?
That's right. This race was very close, but at this point we can now declare that Keith Ellison, incumbent Attorney General, was reelected with 50.4% of the vote compared to 49.6% of the vote for Jim Schultz.
Wow. Those are, again, heartening results. That was the closest one of them all. The one I was most worried about. And let's go now to Taylor, who is at the Jim Schultz loser party.
Oh,
Taylor.
He's very unhappy. His supporters are not happy either. It's not a good night. They really thought they were going to win this one. I mean, it's too close, but it's not happy here.
Okay. Increasing levels of sadness is what we're trying to convey as we go down the list of, we expected a red wave. That's why we only sent Taylor to the like conservative and Republican parties. That's why things are turning out this way. Have we missed any of the state races, Jason? Auditor. We always forget auditor.
Yeah.
Okay, breaking news. Auditor results. Do this one quick, Josh, because this whole thing is dragging to a tremendous degree.
So actually, the closest statewide race was for state auditor. Julie Blaha, incumbent, won with 47.5% of the vote compared to Ryan Wilson with 47.2%.
And my key takeaway there is no one knows what the state auditor is. Or Julie Blaha's got a funny name. You tell me somebody named Julie Blaha's running for auditor, I don't think she's up to the job. Really? Blaha?
Well, I guess one thing that we should maybe ask Josh with the numbers over there. When you look at those numbers, they don't seem to add up to 100. What's going on with that?
Well, Jason, we do have two legal weed parties as major parties in Minnesota. Tim Davis from the Legal Marijuana Now party received 3.6% of the vote, and Will Finn from the Grassroots Legalize Cannabis party received 1.8% of the vote. That also happened to a lesser extent in the governor's race.
Okay, I'm going to have to step in because Taylor is now at the Republican candidate for auditors party, post-election night party, which is still going on for some reason. Taylor, does anyone there in the room, in this hotel ballroom, know what the name of the Republican candidate for state auditor is?
No, absolutely not. No.
That's how sad people are there at that party.
They still want to recount. They'll figure out his name, when it comes time to really push for that. But right now they want to recount, and then they're going to try to figure out who he is exactly.
Okay. Josh, what is the Republican candidate's name again?
That is Ryan Wilson, and as you mentioned earlier, no one knows what the state auditor does. That may include as a state auditor candidate Ryan Wilson.
But that's a solid name. That's a solid name, though. I would vote for that name, Ryan Wilson. He will never let you down.
Yeah, it sounds like the sixth least famous member of the Beach Boys.
It's good that that's a partisan office, because I might have accidentally voted for the Republican if they just said nonpartisan and there were no party names. Ryan Wilson just inspires faith.
You wouldn't vote for Blaha, though, over Ryan Wilson?
It's a weird name. I think names explain a lot of the results in local politics is about names.
I think a lot of it, John, has to do with the fact that white men such as yourself might just gravitate toward names that sound like other white men's.
Yeah. Like with Tom Olson, the guy who ran for Park Board.
Exactly.
He won entirely based on the fact that he's Olson.
Yeah, I feel like John Edwards and Josh Martin have some pretty good names that could just get right by a lot of people.
I'm getting word that we have results in the most hotly contested local race of the night, the Hennepin County Attorney's race, where, Josh, you give us the results.
So, with Hennepin County Attorney, a strong finish for Mary Moriarty, winning 57.6% of the vote to 41.8% of the vote for Martha Holton Dimmick. So, Mary Moriarty will be the next Hennepin County Attorney.
Give us the percentage for Martha Holton Dimmick again, Josh.
41.8%.
Wow. That's for me the most shocking result of the night. So how big that victory was, because I was going into the election very pessimistic about my fellow human being, and I thought all this crime talk would just bring the red wave. And in Hennepin County's case, our version of the red wave is electing a very incompetent. Anyone who knew anything about Martha Holton Dimmick would tell you what a disaster she was, setting aside all the either progressive reformer versus law and order politics of the matter. She would have been a disastrous Hennepin County attorney. Everyone knew it, including the people who endorsed her, but they did it anyway. We're going to go to Taylor now. Taylor is at the Martha Holton Dimmick party. I imagine the people there in this hotel ballroom are saddest of all. Of all the people at all the parties you've been to and all the hotel ballrooms, the people in that room are probably saddest of all, right?
Oh yeah. They are by far. They really thought it would be, they thought they'd win, but they also thought it would be at least a lot closer. Her staff are crying in various corners. It's not a not a pleasant scene. They can't really rally for her to concede either, so they're having a lot of trouble.
I imagine Jacob Fry is crying. Is he crying?
Absolutely. He's locked in the bathroom somewhere, and he won't come out. So we assume that's what's happening. People are working on
incredible. This is incredible work, Taylor, that you've been to all these loser parties in the span of 15 minutes.
Thank you.
And you broke the story about Jacob Fry crying.
In a bathroom.
So, thank
Tragic.
you. Okay. Now that is over, let's bring in Dianna Anderson, a new elections analyst for the Wedge Live podcast. Dianna, do you have any burning thoughts about last night?
Yeah. My first thought would be the people who are going to trans your kids, we all won. So LGBT people are taking over. That was one of the big things in this election, and across the board, LGBT candidates succeeded in Minnesota, which is fantastic to see. Aaron May Quaid, Lee Finke over in the St. Paul-ish area, 66A, I think is her district, won. She's the first trans woman to be elected to the Minnesota State Legislature. Non-binary, two-spirit Native person was elected up in Duluth to the Minnesota House. And we have a non-binary person on the Minneapolis School Board now.
So it's felt to me as though like we had a series of years with a lot of LGBTQ victories. It felt like politics was changing. It's no longer acceptable to hate on that community for political gain. It felt like we were trending that direction. Then we had a setback, and it felt like oh no, we're turning the other direction, like a lot of other things in this country. So have we decided once and for all this is not acceptable, and this is gonna go away now? Are things gonna get better? Can you reassure us that things will get better?
I sure hope so. Florida is still kind of a tricky thing, national politics and stuff, with DeSantis getting that huge mandate. That might push that sort of culture war issue further and stuff. But like anytime one of these big elections comes around, LGBT people, especially trans people, become the punching bag that it excites Republicans. And we saw here in Minnesota and elsewhere that did not work. This time around, we elected nationwide a record number of LGBT candidates, 340 around the U.S., which is fantastic. So it's looking more and more like while those conversations are happening and people are trying to gin them up into big national topics, they are not actually acting as the wedge issue that they could be.
And one of those LGBTQ candidates is Mary Moriarty, who is our new Hennepin County attorney, winning what felt like another front in the crime-themed election battles that we've been having. The first ever openly LGBTQ person or woman to occupy that office. Is that correct?
Yeah, and she came out, I think, during the campaign. She had been pretty private about everything, but had felt a need to claim that during the campaign.
We've had a series of existential threat elections. I think Minneapolis more than any place in the country. 2020 was big for everyone. 21 was big at the city level. Everyone on both sides very concerned. If the other side won, disaster will strike. And again, in 2022, it feels like our democracy is at stake. A lot of things happening locally with crime politics that's heightening people's fears. And then again, we will have another terrible crime-themed city election next year. Are we turning the corner? Martha Holton Dimmock obviously lost big. I don't know how much to attribute that to her politics necessarily, or say that maybe the idea that she was very incompetent and bad at her job as a judge and a prosecutor broke through. I've heard David Brower speculate that it was Mary Moriarty serving as a a commentator during the Chauvin trial like reassured people that this is the smart TV lady who you can trust to give it to you straight about the law. Where are we now, Jason? Are we turning the corner? Will next year be good or bad?
Well, I think, John, the big thing to consider with that question is who is going to have the most money for their messaging and what message do they want to push? I think, we saw a lot of investment from the Jacob Fry wing of the Minneapolis DFL, spending money to support Martha Holton Dimmick. It felt like every major player behind the scenes who backed Fry last year was backing Holton Dimmick. So if they come out again and say, this is the kind of campaign we're going to run because we're going to run like Southern Republicans, I can see that being a message because our local media will run with that sort of thing. It's sensational and it plays to the suburbs. But one thing that I do take some heart in, even if that does become a more dominant theme of the elections in the coming years, is that one of the trends we saw last night was a lot of younger voters coming out, getting engaged. And, that's a whole new block of people who were at very formative ages watching what happened with Derek Chauvin murdering George Floyd and other police killings under the mayor. So I think that there's going to be a new reckoning around what the electorate looks like and how you can actually pander to some of these voting blocks of younger people.
Let me go to my numbers guy, Josh Martin. Is it true that young people were voting in higher numbers yesterday or in this election in particular? Is that true? Because I'm very skeptical when people are like, white people, you've had your day. You're done, white people. And white people just... old white people especially just retain their grip on the direction of this country in a lot of ways. Is it true, Josh? Is what Jason is saying true?
I don't know if we have hard data on that yet. Anecdotally, I would agree with the sentiment that youth turnout appears to be increasing. How much has it increased, I think, is harder to tell. Certainly, there is higher turnout at older age groups. Now, of course, as younger age groups start to age up and become part of the workforce and things like that, they tend to increase their voting record. So I don't know if we can put any hard data to it, but anecdotally, I think I would agree with Jason's general sentiment that youth turnout appears to be increasing.
Okay, Jason, you've been ruled 2.5 Pinocchios by Josh there. 2.5 Pinocchios. Maybe true. Plausible.
Yeah.
Josh,
aim for plausibility.
Josh, keep your spreadsheets open, because one of the fascinating spreadsheets that you produced and posted on Twitter today were those, what did you call them, endorsement mismatches, where, for example, Michael Rainville endorsed Martha Holton Dimmick, and they have so much in common politically in terms of being, belligerent doofuses who just blow nonstop hot air, and there's nothing to back it up. And it's a real shame on this city that those two have become prominent local leaders, so to speak. But the endorsement mismatches, what was the number in Ward 3, for example, and Ward 4, where Latricia Vitaw endorsed Martha Holton Dimmick? And Moriarty ended up winning one Minneapolis big, but I think one everywhere in Minneapolis and one pretty big in those wards.
Yeah, so Mary Moriarty won every ward in Minneapolis, some by more than others, but every ward. For those two wards in particular, she won Ward 3 by 61% of the votes, Ward 4 62%, and Minneapolis citywide 65%. So Jacob Fry and the council members from wards 3 and 4, their endorsements were not consistent with what the voters in those districts ended up choosing.
Who else endorsed Martha Holton Dimmick in Minneapolis? There was Latricia and Michael Rainville, Jacob Fry.
The last Minneapolis elected official to endorse Holton Dimmick was Lisa Goodman in Ward 7. So still a mismatch, but not by as much. Moriarty won Ward 7 with 55% of the vote.
Here's my burning question. Like, what is the difference in turnout in a midterm? Let's use this year's midterm, last year's city election. We have more voters in this midterm than in last year's city election, right?
Yes, certainly. Turnout in last year's city election was about 50%, and that was record turnout for a municipal election. It's normally much lower than that. Midterms tend to be Minnesota, a pretty high turnout, maybe in the 60 to 70 range. But not as high as a presidential, but higher than a municipal election.
Dianna, I wonder if you have any thoughts about whether going to even year city elections is a good idea. Because there's an argument that says give city elections their own year and we can all pay attention to city issues. And people can volunteer on city campaigns and not have to choose, do I volunteer for my city council candidate or do I volunteer for this state legislative race out in Nowhereville, Minnesota to try to flip a seat and help the cause statewide. But then there's the turnout argument where you have more people voting. Maybe it's a more progressive electorate. I don't know. In a midterm year. It certainly feels maybe that's the case based on last night. What do you think about that idea in even-yeared city election?
I am in favor of putting them together, but I grew up in South Dakota where it's normal to have them together like that. So for me, having them on off years was strange when I first moved to Minneapolis. And I think turnout helps everybody on the ballot. Regardless of volunteer status. We find that in a lot of races where, if somebody is turning out to vote for somebody for president, they're going to look down ballot and also vote on those as well. So in order to get the full picture of what Minnesota and Minneapolis are voting for, I think it's good to move those municipal elections.
Taylor, do you have any thoughts on this? Taylor has left her final results party and is back in studio now. So, Taylor, you've been listening to the show as it's gone on, though. We've been in your ear. Based on your conversations with people at all those results parties, what do you think about moving to even year of city elections?
I think, based on all of this, I think we should. Just because, we get over, I don't know if what happened next year and this year is a complete anomaly. I haven't really followed how this happened, but we just finished this election and now it's now we have city council coming up just next year. And it feels like there's a lot of fatigue around elections. And it's in situations like this, you worry about just overloading people too much. And I feel like combining them might be good for that, but.
Yeah, next year would normally be an off year for city voters. There would be nothing going on. But surprise, we're doing it again. Probably going to have four in a row of these. 2024 is going to be hell on us nationally. Every year we're worried that our worlds will explode. It's very stressful. Mm-hmm. And city politics used to be an escape for me. This is where the good things happen. And it's been nothing but crime politics, just nonstop crime politics. Okay, now is as good a time as any to go to European correspondent Mike Norton. Mike, you're joining us for Amsterdam, a city in the Netherlands. Is that correct?
That's right, John. I'm joining you live from Amsterdam, where cannabis has been legal for adults for decades, and the trains still run on time.
It's amazing technology that we can have you here on a podcast live from the Netherlands, isn't it?
That's right. Really, we're living in the future.
It's amazing that Yeah, it's amazing that you could afford to fly him over there, John.
Yeah, and
I
you're
didn't
you're
realize
there.
that Wedge Live was so flush.
Right.
You're there to tell us what Europe's reaction to Martha Holton Dimmick losing last night is, because going into the election, all of Europe was about to write off Minneapolis and Hennepin County as a lost cause, no longer worthy of allyship. We couldn't be trusted if we would elect someone such as Martha Holton Dimmick to be our top prosecutor. Like, what are those Americans doing? What are those Hennepin County residents doing? I think was a phrase used in an editorial in a large British newspaper. But you're over in the Netherlands. What is the reaction there to last night's?
In Amsterdam, the city, there are a lot of Mary Moriarty fans. However, in Greater Holland, particularly Zwede Holland, there were a lot of Dimmick supporters and a lot of people that thought that she was right for the county attorney role. But at this point, Amsterdam has moved on. The bitterballen has been fried, so to speak, and they're on to new topics.
Okay. Well, Mike, the real reason you're here is you provided all of us with free drugs.
Complimentary, I would say.
Some of us have used them tonight. Some of us haven't. Some of us weren't aware that this was going to be a thing. Diana, if Mike had given you free drugs, would you have used any of them tonight for this drug-fueled election results?
Maybe after the podcast, but not during. I'm not a huge THC person, so.
Sure, to each their
Do
own.
you not respond to it?
I grew up evangelical, so I've never really had a lot of it.
I'm with you.
So,
I haven't used drugs my entire life until they became legal and a upstanding entrepreneur like Mike Norton started selling them in a legal way. Didn't use it all. And I found that one has no impact. Is that 5 milligrams, I think? One? And then
That's correct.
2 also has no impact. I'm a large 220-pound man, I think, and they just... no impact until I got to 3, and I felt a little goofy. That's my review of the Mike Norton brand drug chocolates.
Yeah. Well, I will also say my experience is sort of a combination between the two of you. I grew up evangelical, but I'm also a large person and has dabbled in some THC use in the past, but it never impacted me. And I had a lot of different experiences with THC, and it never, made me feel anything more than maybe a little sleepy. But I have noticed that with Mike Norton's chocolates, if I eat 3 of either of the 2 chocolate varieties from Baja Ontario, I kind of achieve a relaxed kind of floaty feeling, which is pretty nice for somebody who deals with chronic anxiety.
It's cool that we've shifted into commercial for Mike Norton's drug company.
Yeah, I knew you wouldn't write a place, so
I want to go to data maestro Josh Martin in the election center. Statistically speaking, isn't it true that Mike Norton's Chocolates is a much better name than the stupid name he gave his company, which is Baja Ontario? Why would you name your company Baja Ontario? That's a joke you make to yourself, and you overestimate how much people will be amused by it. Taylor, what do you think?
We were jokingly calling them, before we knew the name and everything, and he just told us he was developing these. We were jokingly calling them Norton Nugs. So that's kind of what they are in my mind still, Norton Nugs.
That's also a better name.
Yeah.
Josh, what do you think? What does the data tell us?
We haven't poll tested this, but I don't know. I think the data does support that Norton Nugs would be a better name.
Yeah. But nobody is abused by Baja Ontario. People are just confused. You're more confusing people than amusing people, Mike Norton. Who we have lost. We've lost Mike Norton.
He fell in a canal or something.
Yeah. He had to jump into a ship that was moving through the canal to foil some international spies or something like that. Anything could be happening. It's Amsterdam.
Yeah. Diana, do you pay attention to state politics? I don't pay attention to state politics much at all. So I was wondering if you could opine on the big. It seems like a big deal that the DFL will control the governor, the House, State House, and the State Senate. That seems like a big deal. Can you speak to us about that?
First time since 2014, which is really good. It's good for the DFL agendas. We'll be able to push more progressive things through. One of the things from my end, since LGBTQ issues is my focus, is that we're going to be able to, Dibble is finally going to be able to push forward his conversion therapy ban, which has been stymied by Republicans' hold on the Senate for a while. So I'm really excited about that, a statewide ban on it. And we're also hopefully going to be pushing for a ban on the trans panic defense, which is still a legal defense in Minnesota. So that would be really good. And having the trifecta is just really good for the DFL. It gives us a mandate to push things through, especially more progressive things that we couldn't before. And maybe legalization.
Mike, we were talking about legalization of cannabis, and I understand that in your role as Minneapolis DFL vice chair, you have a challenge to issue to the new DFL State Senate.
That's right. If you remember back in July, the state DFL promised legal cannabis if Democrats were elected to the state Senate. Now here we are. I mean, to me, if we can't pass an adult use cannabis law in Minnesota in 2023 that includes expungement, that includes taxes to fund school budget shortfalls, I mean, what are we doing? I think we should hold every DFL Senate member accountable to that promise.
Okay. Are you worried about attack ads based on your status as both a drug dealer and vice chair of the Minneapolis DFL?
Attack ads on me?
Yeah. I mean,
using my quote?
Ilhan Omar is a juicy target, I will admit. But having a drug dealer as the Minneapolis DFL vice chair, just openly giving out free drugs to the local community seems attack ad work.
That sounds like socialism.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I believe it's like 65% of Minnesotans support adult use cannabis already. So I don't know why this really needs to be an issue. I don't know that you could use it as an attack ad because it's probably beneficial to the DFL.
I mean, unpopular things have never stopped the Republicans from nominating Scott Jensen, for example.
Well, how did that turn out?
Right. I don't think Republicans are going to have a reckoning with their past mistakes.
Well, I mean, I think that's good for the DFL because if they continue down this path, it's going to be a one-party state or continue to be a one-party state for a long time.
Yeah, but then like some event no one can anticipate causes them to win one election and then the game is over. Everyone thought Trump was like a big joke on Republicans in 2020. Never elect that guy. Thank goodness for Donald Trump. And
I appreciate your pessimism, but I mean, we have full control. Like we have the Senate, we have the House, we have the governor's office. I mean, there's no reason to, mess around with this. Like we should get it done.
Yeah, it's true. But I'm not speaking generally about cannabis. Just like I'm already ready for the backlash to the backlash. For example, Mary Moriarty has already been blamed for all the crime that happened in 2022, even though she won't take office until 2023, simply because she won her election in 2022. All the crime charts will show the day Mary Moriarty won office in 2022, well, the crime just exploded. Operation Gopher Guardian was no match for Mary Moriarty.
I mean, how lucky are we to have Mary? I mean, Mary won by 16%. Like, that's a big number. And people were scared that Martha was going to be the next county attorney. I mean, 16% is a huge win. And, me personally, I'm excited for what Mary's going to bring. And I think it can be a big change. I mean, particularly for Mike Freeman.
I think that we're lucky that Mary Moriarty is as tough as she is. Like, nobody is smarter or sharper than Mary Moriarty. Nobody's like gonna let themselves be embarrassed in public to to the degree, like, she is extremely prepared for this, and she will need every bit of that preparation and skill, because she is now public enemy number one and will be blamed for everything that everyone else got wrong. So, yeah, I'm ready for the backlash to the backlash.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting next year with the city council and how that proceeds. I think a lot of people look at the results of the Mary Moriarty, Martha Holton Dimmick contest as sort of a referendum on the crime campaigning that has been done over the past couple of years. So having the opportunity to point to this result and say there is a big desire in the city for progressive change in our criminal justice system. There is a big desire to not just fold everything into a more police solution to crime, but to look at some holistic responses and answers to real core issues around crime. This is a really unprecedented opportunity and a good way to look at what I was talking about earlier with a new electorate and what issues are really seen as important and vital.
Josh, I want to go back to you talking about you're familiar with the Charter Commission's even year election thing, right? Where they're trying to, and like one of the big advocates for that is what's his name? Matt Perry.
Yes, he is a big supporter of it.
He was he ran that PAC in 2017. It was like a big business PAC where they were trying to prop up the anti-progressive council candidates, and that, like, they spent what then was an obscene amount of money for a city election for like an outside PAC like that. I think it was like $270,000, which now seems like nothing because like groups were dumping millions on last year's election. I don't think Matt Perry thinks last night is. I think that's going to cause him to reassess his opinion of this even year election thing, because I think his aim with that is to like make sure nobody can volunteer, nobody can pay attention. Like all the money will flow into the conservative candidate side so they can buy a bunch of ads, and then everyone's voting for the last mailer they got instead of like being able to hear from a campaign. I kind of see this even year election thing fading away unless somebody on the progressive side is like, hey, this can benefit me. Yeah, we definitely should do this.
Yeah, we'll see. Matt Perry is only one member of the commission, and he's not the only one that's pushing the issue. And I'm not sure all of them are doing it for the same reasons as Matt Perry. But it's going to be a while until we find out what the commission decides to do with that, because the issue is there's some state law conflicts currently, and it's probably going to be a few years before that changes, if at all. So, it might not even be the same members on the commission by the time they finally are able to make a decision on that.
Who are the other members that like it? Because I found it hard to tell. I think Clegg seems okay with it. Who are the other people?
Clegg is the main person pushing it. He was the one who originally proposed it. He's been kind of shepherding it through the work group process. He was a big supporter of maintaining the work group's existence, even though they can't currently do it due to state law conflicts. And his big argument, I think, has been because of the fact that turnout is higher in even year elections, and therefore it is more representative of the population at large than the lower turnout in a municipal election.
I've been on the fence about whether I like the idea because of the like splitting volunteer time, splitting people's attentions. I don't know. I think Barry Clegg is a smart guy and is not like openly corrupt in any way, but I think he is still motivated by doing things that are in his political interest. So I don't know. Jason, what do you think about even year elections? You for it? You against it?
Yeah, generally I support it. I grew up in another state where this was just how it was done. It didn't seem to throw anybody off, wasn't an extra burden. I can see the concern around splitting people's volunteer time and things like that. But I also think that knowing a lot of people who do a lot of campaigning, I think, like Taylor mentioned earlier, with election fatigue really setting in, I think we're seeing a lot of the people who volunteer with campaigns and do power a lot of that are starting to burn out too. And I think if it was, a more broad representative election or electorate for an even year election cycle, they would be so much more engaged. It would be so much easier to get the word out, and people would be more receptive to hearing about it, because it's not just year after year of, in some cases, the same politicians every 2 years that you're hearing from again and again.
The more I think about it, the more I think it's extremely dangerous for conservatives, because now that the mayor is the whole game, if you also move this to a potential midterm or election year, presidential election year, somebody like Ilhan Omar runs for mayor, or some other somebody who's good at getting lots of media attention, becoming like a very well-known, high-name ID progressive, because the electorate will be progressive, it's just a matter of how many people will know about this candidate. We could elect a very progressive mayor, and then everyone is crying about how we have everyone who pushed for the strong mayor system is crying about how this awful, no good, far left mayor is ruining things for them. So I feel like I'm making a great case for our conservative charter commission to forget they ever had this idea. I apologize. We could have had even near elections.
Well, the good news is I doubt that Barry Clegg cares much what you think.
Oh, sure he does, Jason.
So,
you don't think he likes me? He once responded to one of my tweets.
I know. I think he likes you. I just don't think that he necessarily cares what you think about the things that he is interested in.
I believe Barry Clegg respects me. I don't care what you say. Maybe we could have.
I think it's well within his purview to respect you or not. How's that?
Barry Clegg, if you're listening, email newsroom@wedgelive.com. I'll send you my phone number, and we can text about having you on the podcast to talk about local issues. That's a sincere promise. I think we'll have a great conversation. I'll bring Josh on. Everybody. Josh, one of the things I'm surprised about you is how everyone on the Charter Commission seems to like you more than me.
I don't know what to tell you. Some of them seem to appreciate the notes that I take, because it does help spread the word about what the Charter Commission does, which it's not always a focus of the mainstream media unless there's something really controversial in the news, like Question 2. They use the notes themselves sometimes just to look back at what happened at a previous meeting. So I think they appreciate that someone's paying attention to them. And I don't know, maybe I'm not quite as mean to them as you are.
Probably. You're putting the city clerk out of a job by taking such good notes that our city's independent boards and commissions are like, what happened at our last meeting? I don't know. Josh Martin has a Google Doc, though. Let's consult that. Dianna, you're a member of the Trans Equity Council. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, the Transgender Equity Council, and I am co-chair of it.
Co-chair. You recently gave a present. Speaking of our city's independent boards and commissions, whose membership is made up of volunteer, mostly. Vast majority of them are residents of the city, I think, unless there's been a waiver. So,
yes.
Yeah. How has your experience been serving on
frustrating, but also very good. Like learning a lot about how the inner politics of the city works has been really fascinating. And and stuff, but also being on an advisory board, I just get to be the annoying leftist who is like, no, we should do this. Like, we need to prioritize this, blah, blah, blah. While the city is like, well, we can't do that, my voters.
Yeah. Do you think the recommendations you recently made to the city council is going to have an impact, or are they just going to dismiss you as a far left activist group?
Yeah, we're seeing support for a bunch of the recommendations within the city council already, which is really good. And so if we have our monthly meeting tomorrow, so if anybody wants to come to that, the information's up on the LIMS system, but there's a lot of support from within the community as well, because one of the things that we do on the TEC is to meet with community groups and stuff that are working in a bunch of different issues. Last month we heard from Southside Harm Reduction Services and all of that, so we are trying hard to push the council to consider the complete diversity of the city when they are making their decisions.
Is there a particular recommendation you made that you're very excited about and think like, wow, this could happen? We could really make this happen?
Yeah, under the reorganization that's happening with the strong mayor stuff, they've made the Department of Racial Equity actually into like an entire department rather than just a division under the city coordinator's office. And that's a little into the weeds, but we're hoping that they will support putting in an LGBTQ equality division under that, which would make for an official position within the city government that handles LGBTQ issues and works and coordinates with the Civil Rights Office and all that to help LGBTQ Minneapolis residents, which would be great and add to the legacy of our city as a place for the queer and trans community.
Taylor, I wonder if you were chosen to serve on one of the city's independent boards and commissions, which one would you want to serve on?
Oh, God. Probably one for, like, pedestrian stuff or bike lane stuff. That would be a safe one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scooter stuff.
Yeah. Scooter agenda, sure.
Taylor, how many of Mike Norton's chocolates have you ingested?
I think 6, maybe.
Wow. Yeah. Is it having an effect?
Not as strong as you'd think, but I have a pretty high tolerance, and like edibles typically don't make me really messed up. They are really nice though. Like typically, edibles just don't work on me. Like I don't get much of an effect, but like the Baja Ontario ones that are especially like the caramel and the chocolate ones really work the best. I don't know if it's something with like the fat content and the THC, but those are just like Jason said, they're kind of like an enjoyable, like warm body high feeling. So no, I'm not like messed up.
Josh, it's getting so late and I know you have to go at 7. We didn't run through any of the internet questions for you. Do you have answers to the internet questions?
There were a lot of questions along the vein of what does this mean for the future of Minneapolis elections 2023 and also some looking ahead to 25 for Jacob Frey. I do think it's a good sign. I would say that we never want to read too much into any one election. It's always just one snapshot in time, so we don't want to look too much at just the 21 election or the 22 election. But certainly do I feel better about 2023 with this result than if Martha Holton Dimick had won county attorney? Yes, I do. Some asked about the crossover districts who voted with question 2 and Mary Moriarty versus Martha Holton Dimick. So as I mentioned earlier, Mary Moriarty won every ward in Minneapolis. So the instances where there was wards that voted no on 2 but voted for Mary Moriarty would be any ward that voted no on 2, which would be wards 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, and 13. And there were no wards that there were no wards that voted for Martha Holton Dimick at all, so there is no example of crossover in the other direction. Somebody asked whether the path to a progressive majority on the city council runs through Ward 8. I think the short answer to that is yes. I looked into it a bit more. I certainly think Ward 8 is probably one of the better pickup opportunities for progressives. I don't think it's impossible to get a progressive majority without Ward 8, but I think probably most scenarios in which you have a progressive majority include getting a progressive in Ward 8.
It's like arguably the most progressive ward in the city, and
Ward 9 might have a speed,
maybe
a little bit,
maybe, but still, I don't know if Andrea Jenkins is living up to the Ward 8 standard at this point.
Someone asked how big was the redistricting for the DFL. So I don't know that redistricting itself made that big of a difference. The process, as it always has been in Minnesota, went through the courts. They kind of went for minimum change. There wasn't like a clear attempt to gerrymander for one party or the other. But population growth generally in Minnesota did increase quite a bit in the suburban areas, which in recent years have voted more heavily for DFL. So to that extent, if there's higher population in areas that are strongly DFL, and then therefore that takes up a bigger chunk of the districts, then that helps the DFL. So I think it has more to, so I would say kind of yes, but more to do with population growth than anything that happens specifically in the redistricting process. Without the DSA, would DFL have lost a bunch of races because of legal weed candidates? I don't think there were too many races with legal weed candidates, but there were a few, and those did happen to be very close. I don't think I can pinpoint how much any particular group, whether it's DSA or anyone else, contributed to that. But certainly the very many door-knocking operations there were for DFL candidates, for people like Keith Ellison and Julie Blaha and Angie Craig in District 2, certainly helped overcome some of the siphoning that happened with legal weed candidates. Even though Martha lost, did the Joe Rad apparatus grow even stronger for the upcoming election? I don't think so. I think you can maybe make the case that they didn't necessarily get weaker. They still have a lot of money and power. They still have a lot of the establishment forces behind them. But losing generally is bad. I don't really see the argument that this made them stronger.
I mean, you could argue that Samuel's coming so close. Like, wow. You really overperformed your terribleness as a candidate. Things must be good for your side, but not.
Absolutely.
Not
if the question was, are they stronger after Samuel's performance in the primary? That I could see a much better case for. But with Martha Holton Dimick losing by 16 points, I don't see much of an argument there.
I think the message is do all your damage in the primary because you're going to get shelled. You're going to get the crap kicked out of you in the general election. That's the message. Somebody wanted to know about ceding parts of Ward 11 and Ward 13 to Edina. Can you dissect Wards 11 and 13 by precinct so we know which neighborhoods to cede to Edina? That's a humorous. That's meant as a joke.
Okay.
But you can analyze it. I want you to analyze it. Go. Which ones should we cede?
Well, I don't know that we have time to get too deep in the weeds on precinct level data, but there is a map that the Star Tribune put out, and if you look at that map, it would if essentially you wanted to cede the Martha Holton Dimick precincts in Ward 13, that would be 1310 and 1311, which it looks like is basically Lyndhurst.
That's where I live.
Pretty much it.
I live in Lyndhurst. You would cede me to Edina? I'm gone now?
You live in a terrible place, Mike. How do you how do you just exist in that place with those people?
You know, I don't say these types of things about the Wedge. I would never say that the Wedge is a terrible place. I have a lovely time in Lyndhurst.
I'm not saying I would cede you to a Dianna and Mike Norton. This is questioners on Twitter. I'm just responding to their questions.
And we should point
All right,
out
I'll calm down.
We should point out that Mary Moriarty won Ward 13. Everyone's boogeyman, conservative boogeyman, Ward 13. Turns out if you have a midterm in Ward 13, a progressive can win against a very poorly qualified, disastrous ex-judge.
Yeah, I mean, the patterns still hold. Like, certainly she won by less in Ward 13 than in some other wards, but she still won with 55% of the vote, which is still pretty decent.
Unfortunately, I do need to go. But
we
I
weren't
appreciate
utilizing your services that heavily, so it's fine.
That's all right, and it's 2 a.m. here in Amsterdam, so I'm going to call it a night. So enjoy the rest of your...
I like that Mike Norton gave us a half hour of his European vacation to just listen to us.
I'm not on vacation. This is work. I'm here for the Intermodal Europe Expo, sir.
I thought we sent you there to gauge the reactions of Europeans to the Martha Holton Dimmock's massive loss, but okay.
I just did that for my leisure time in between meetings.
Okay.
Thank you again, and I hope you all have a great night.
Thank you for the drugs, Mike
Thank you
Norton.
for the drugs, Mike Norton.
Bye, Mike.
Bye, Mike.
Bye.
Okay. As we've been talking, I've had a big idea, and it's probably stale by now. I just didn't want to interrupt Josh as he was talking. But much like national politics, conservative local candidate quality is going down. It's going down, and I use like Michael Rainville as an example of this. Martha Holton Dimmock is another good example of this. Just like
some might say Becca Thompson.
Yeah, Becca Thompson on the park board is also an example of this. Just like anyone who's willing to like use a few, scare you, just is demonstrably just not all there as a person, can win if they pander to some conservative talking points, get some business money behind them. And it's one of the reasons I've been pessimistic. And one of the things that I take away from last night that makes me a little more optimistic about the future is that maybe that doesn't work. Maybe you can be so bad as a candidate that at least in Hennepin County, people won't take you seriously. But also we're stuck with Michael Rainville probably. I really hope someone runs who can beat him in 2023, which will be a very low turnout year. There won't be a mayor on the ballot, but the city council is up. People should go out and replace Michael Rainville, who was such an embarrassment. Such an embarrassment. Equating affordable housing with crime, as he did in his role in the Planning Commission. Insulting Muslims and Somali people as those responsible for crime in his ward in one of his neighborhoods. That's terrible. He's just an awful, no good, racist buffoon in Ward 3, which voted 60+% for Mary Moriarty. Obviously, there's enough people in Ward 3 if they just vote this guy out, please. But anyway, back to my main point. Increasingly bad candidates locally that's mirroring the national thing with Republicans. Dianna, let's go to you. Let's do a roundtable discussion here. Dianna, how do we stop increasingly bad local candidates? Because we're not going to win them all. If you're on the left, if you're a progressive, you don't win them all. You want the other side not to have
Yeah, you don't want the other side to be a Kim Crockett or a Kristi Noem, to cite my home state. I think that's a question of if we want to be serious about it, a question of the Republican identity, because that party is fracturing a lot between the like sort of reasonable-ish Republicans, like your John Thunes, people like that, and the absolute nut jobs. Like Lauren Boebert, who is at 50-50 in her race in Colorado. And I think a lot of that is just that party identity is not good. And So when you do field a conservative candidate or somebody who's more on the right, there's a lot fewer reasonable people who want to be associated with right-wing positions, so they are not going to put themselves up for election. So, and I don't know how to resolve that as an issue until the Republican Party gets its shit together.
Jason, I wonder if you have any big ideas for how to stop Michael Rainville, who was a menace.
Well, I think one of the interesting points about conservative candidates, especially in this new conservative traditionalist wing of the DFL, is that they're kind of building this machinery out. As Diana mentioned, this is sort of how Republican politics have been for a while. But this Jacob Fry, Joe Radinovich, Jacob Hill wing of the Minneapolis DFL is sort of feeling out like what are the limits to Minneapolis voters? Like, how bad can a candidate be before they're rejected? Clearly,
Mickey Moore,
Don Samuels, and Mickey Moore, Victor Martinez. Many of these candidates are just sort of like testing how far in just terrible directions candidates can go and still be able to call themselves Democrats, even. So I think that the way that we stop this is to just keep beating those candidates. And like you said, you can't win all of the races, but I think one of the few positives about how quickly we're going to be re-electing city council is that people have seen what someone like Michael Rainville does, and hopefully there are a lot more progressive voters in Ward 3 that were more fired up for even socialist alternative candidates will come back out and vote and make sure that Michael Rainville isn't the sort of person that is representing them. And hopefully we can continue to win some of these races in areas that swung conservative last time and bring them back in a very short turnaround.
My initial reaction to Michael Rainville's candidacy was the idea that, like, they couldn't have run a normal person who had, like, any shot of winning. Why didn't they, like, you're going to put all the Barb Johnson, Rainville family baggage on this guy. You're going to nominate this old, out-of-touch rich guy who, well-connected deeply connected to the business community. He just seemed a caricature of the kind of candidate who couldn't win, and then he ended up winning. Josh, how do we stop Michael Rainville? Do you have any ideas? What do the numbers tell us about how to stop Michael Rainville?
So Michael Rainville, I think both numbers in 2021 and in 2022 show that he is maybe in some danger. There were very close votes on the ballot questions there, pretty close to the citywide average. There also, as we saw, pretty strong performance for Moriarty there. So arguably that ward is not as far right as a Michael Rainville candidate is a good fit for. So I think there's definitely potential for a more progressive candidate to win there. In terms of, like, how do we get the conservatives to nominate better candidates? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that the numbers can help us there.
One thing I'm worried about is the pool of candidates who are willing to run for local offices. As we nationalize the vitriol locally, I mean, I guess the right way to put that is we're localizing national style vitriol. And, like, people will show up at your house to protest. People, like, it's just, it's not a pleasant job. It's not the feel good, I'm going to fix your streets and I'm going to deliver you clean water kind of job, like low criticism, low stakes. Things have become very high stakes, and everyone is angry on all sides, and people are going to yell at you. And I don't know if people who can just, I can stay home with my family and be happy, want to give that up and become candidates. So I do worry about candidate quality. Maybe Michael Rainville was the only one who had nothing else going on and has no conscience and things don't bother him, and he just jumped in. I don't know. Jason, do you have a response to my words?
I mean, I don't think we can rule it out that everyone else in the Johnson-Rainville family stepped back and he just wasn't quick enough.
Yeah. How do we get the best Rainvilles to step forward to govern this city is my real question. Only the best possible Rainvilles.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how you would go about analyzing that. So we'll have to have Josh build out a spreadsheet for us for next time.
Also, do we think that Ryan Winkler? Do we think Ryan Winkler would have won for Hennepin County Attorney if he'd made it to the general election?
I think Ryan Winkler thinks about that a lot.
Are you saying me and Ryan Winkler are the only people who care about that question?
It's an interesting question. He lost the primary by a very small margin, so it very easily could have been Moriarty, Winkler in the general. That's what everyone thought was going to be the case. Holton Dimick was somewhat of a surprise. 57% is a pretty strong performance. Since Winkler doesn't have some of Holton Dimick's baggage, maybe he could have closed that margin a little bit. Maybe he would have been closer. I don't know if he would have won.
Yeah. It's shocking to me, like, how little base of support Martha Holton Dimick appears to have in the city of Minneapolis. Like, what we hear with candidates like Don Samuels and Martha Holton Dimick, they're from the community. They have North Minneapolis is behind them. This is what North Minneapolis really thinks and believes, and you're not listening. You look at election results in wards 4 and 5. They don't win where they live. So how are you making these claims?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, an effect of the proximity to political power that some members of that group have had for quite some time. And they feel like they're entitled to be the one who speaks for a community, whether they don't actually remain connected with the community. I won't speak for the black community because that is not my place. But I will say that, as people, we tend to feel like we are responsible for our community, so we want to be the ones who speak out, and I think that's a very great instinct, but I also think that some people do it for more of a selfish reason, and that leads them to cling to this proximity to power that they've had and don't want to relinquish because it's what they feel like makes them better than what their surroundings are.
I think we're coming to the end of the show, and I wanted to end with maybe recommendations. Maybe everyone can do one recommendation, and I don't want it to be like, go read this research paper. There's a lot of good ideas in this. That's terrible. A couple of candidates did that to me, like, oh yeah, I just recommend people go read policy documents, this such and such policy document. Why? Okay, you're smart. We believe you. I wanted this to be a fun segment, and you've made it terrible. So give us some recommendations. We're going to go. Taylor, are you ready to go first? Do you have a recommendation of something that's brightening your day? You don't want to go first.
Oh, that's brightening my day?
Yeah, what did you think I was going to ask you to recommend?
I don't know. A policy document to go read. I don't know.
Oh, no. My intro to this was not clear. Just recommend something that will make someone happy, that you enjoy.
Somebody else go first. This feels, I don't know.
Jason, we're going to go to you first. Are you prepared to answer this question?
Sure. Something that has been making me happy lately is taking some time to get outside, walk around. We've had this unusually warm fall, and now after a couple of days of rain, it actually feels oddly like a spring day. But I think that, as we've talked about before, we're all in this long slog of elections, and it feels like there's a new political crisis every week. But just taking some time to get away from screens, get away from those things that are stressing us out, that's what's been making me happy, and that's what I recommend our viewers and listeners do.
Diana, are you prepared to answer this question?
Absolutely. I'm going to recommend some reading material, but not a policy document. The book Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. It is a gender plague book where every person with a certain level of testosterone basically turns into a zombie. And so the book follows a few trans women who are trying to survive in this hellacious world that they found themselves in. And it is A+ horror. It's a really, really good book.
Josh Martin.
To round it out for a few different types of things to recommend people, I watched a TV show recently on Hulu called Reboot, which is it's about a reboot of a fictional 90s comedy, essentially, and probably the best-selling point about it for me was that Rachel Bloom is one of the stars in it, and I was a big fan of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So it has, it's a very funny show, so something to, and smart as well, but something that you can watch and enjoy and unwind after a hard day of politics.
Taylor, one of the downsides of protesting going first and then moving yourself to last is that now the expectations have been raised.
Oh,
so
you should dash those. I pretty much my only escape from I'm really on screens a lot, and that's not good. But when I want to get away from the Twitter politics stuff, I usually watch really bad reality TV. The 90 Day Fiance, really great. Seeking Sister Wife, Original Sister Wives, The Duggars. I just love garbage and mess.
This is your healthy alternative
it
to
is.
Social media.
Yep. Yep. This is.
I think you've named the thing that is probably the only thing more unhealthy than our social media environment is watching the shows you just named.
They're great. I don't know.
That's how Taylor puts on some emotional armor to wade back into Twitter every day.
I'm going to contradict you, Taylor, and say that the emotional trauma that you've withstood by being so plugged into your screens has been a great service to the rest of us.
Thank you.
And if you can hold on for a couple of more years as your body takes these hits, I think we would appreciate it.
I don't know any other way. It's just I'm too online.
To use a sports analogy, you're like our Pro Bowl defensive end who has taken so many hits to the head.
Yeah.
Over
Got
his
CTE.
Career. We just need you to go out there for one more game and put it all out on the field. And inject Mike Norton's chocolates
Yep.
into your eyeballs so you can withstand more screen time. That's how I feel.
Got it.
I don't usually do recommendations myself because I just have a real boring life. But one thing I enjoy doing on election day, and I did yesterday, was I served as an election judge. And I know Josh Martin serves as an election judge. Do we have any more election judges here? No? I can recommend it.
I have been in the past.
You should get back into it, Jason. I can recommend it because people tend to stress out about the results for that day, especially we've had multiple like existential threat elections in a row. And one thing about serving as an election judge, you are so tired by the end of the day, especially if you do a full day. You don't care. You don't want to watch TV. I was relying on Jason to send direct messages about who won, who lost, so I didn't have to like sift through social media posts. And like if things go bad, you can be so tired that you just fall asleep. And we've heard a lot of attacks on our democracy about how you can't trust it. It's rigged. The game is rigged. And if you are conspiracy minded and you want, I hate making this recommendation for conspiracy minded people to serve as election judges. That's probably bad. But if you have any doubts, you should volunteer to serve as an election judge, because people care so much about like they don't want to have any discrepancy in the number of ballots at the end of the night that were handed out and the number that are in that machine. Like that is a crisis. That qualifies as a crisis. Everyone is too busy following rules and like watching each other's back for anything untoward to happen when it comes to Minneapolis election administration. Like that stuff just does not happen. Everyone is super careful. Everyone is following the rules. And like one of the good things about it is you're registering. We have same day registration in Minnesota, and you are registering a ton of voters, especially on a day like yesterday. And that feels good. People are mostly very grateful that you're there helping them vote. And like in 99.9% of the cases, I don't care like how many documents you think you don't have or not prepared to vote that day. Like we find ways to help people vote. That's how the vast majority of these situations resolve. People are like on the phone with election headquarters. How do we solve this or that problem? Helping people vote so they don't go home and they aren't forced to not vote. So that's my recommendation, is to sign up to be an election judge. At our polling place in the South Wedge, only one person signed up to be an election judge. And I think that's because we did a bad job promoting the sign-up sheet. I think I can recommend signing up to be an election judge. I know it's needed. There was a heavy rush around 5-6 o'clock yesterday where we barely had enough people to keep the line from going out the doors. But like usually that you have extra people where, somebody can take a break. Nobody could take a break. And we almost ran out of ballots too. Josh, did you run out of ballots? Come close. And I don't mean like ballots for the polling place. Like you have to prep them and like initial them. So the ballot station where you prep the ballots was having a very hard time keeping up with the number of voters who were coming in.
Yes, we had that problem as well. And similar to your experience, we had a rush come in around 5-6 o'clock and we were struggling to keep up.
Yeah. I felt bad because I was manning the station where we hand out the ballots and felt like we had a big stack, but I may have not warned people, hey, there's too many people coming through, prep some more. So wherever you live, go be a poll worker, an election judge. I can recommend that. Okay, that's the end of this episode, everyone. I want to thank co-anchor Jason Garcia, in the Wedge Live election war room, Josh Martin, thank you. Dianna Anderson, thank you for being our newest pundit. Taylor Dahlin, thank you for going to all those hotel ballrooms to tell us about how sad everyone was. And I'm your host, John Edwards. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.